So, Jeff, I'm not sure if you ever heard this phrase, but one of our founding fathers, I forget which one it was, George Washington, I have no idea. But I remember reading a quote one time that said, I don't trust any person who salts their food before they taste it.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's a good one.
Yeah, well, it's good advice.
Yes.
And that's what Peter is giving us today, advice to young men and advice to elders.
Okay. Well, he's Chris and I'm Jeff, and we're the Bible guys. Do you ever do that, though, Chris? Do you ever salt your food before you taste it?
No, I don't ever. I mean, not anymore. I might have when I was young.
Ever since you read that quote?
Well, believe it or not, it has stuck with me because I remember it.
Yeah.
I don't remember who said it, but I remember hearing the quote and thinking to myself, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
somebody's going to base trust. In other words, what he's saying is that person probably doesn't have good discernment.
Right.
He's not wise.
Right. They're not taking the time to find out what the facts are before they make a decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't trust their decisions.
I do it at breakfast time. I do know I do that at breakfast.
Oh.
Yeah, if I sit down and I've got scrambled eggs and some hash browns,
Yeah.
I'm putting some salt and pepper on my hash browns and my eggs.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you just know.
If you love salt, especially, you can't.
Especially, I'm a
You
salt
can't make
fiend.
that a rule for your whole life. I don't think.
Okay.
So today we're doing a Books of the Bible draft list.
Okay. So we're drafting what the best books in the Bible.
Yeah, and we're supposed to do 5 each, which is we're drafting
That's-
10 out of the 66 books.
Okay.
And we're supposed to rock paper scissors.
Yeah, so we're only supposed to pick the good books in the Bible. We're going to try to
Well,
avoid the bad books in the Bible.
No,
Is that what we're doing?
I think the word is.
'Cause I don't like that book.
favorite.
Oh, favorite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, favorite. So
All right, rock, paper, scissors to find out
so
who gets
1,
the
2, 3,
first draft.
shoot. Ready?
1, 2, 3, shoot. 1, 2, 3, shoot. 1, 2, 3, shoot.
That's hilarious.
Okay,
So we both did rock, and then I changed mine to paper. He did rock.
I almost switched to think he's going to paper now. I'm going to go to scissors, and I didn't.
That's really funny.
Yep.
Okay, so mine's first. So I'm
Yes,
going
you get
to
the draft
draft
first.
number 1, the Book of Proverbs.
Really? Oh, that's such a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's value in obviously so many books. I like Proverbs as my first draft pick because it covers the gamut of life.
Yeah.
It is like every chapter has like 30 or 40 brand new pieces of advice.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good one.
Yep.
That's like one of my favorites.
Yes.
Okay, I think I would choose Romans.
Yeah.
Just because the first half of Romans tells me how to know Jesus and how that whole gospel grace thing works. Second half tells me how to live for him. So if you only had one book, that would get you to Jesus and help you live like him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my second pick is round 2 is the Book of James.
James. Oh, that was going to be my second pick.
Yeah. So James is just filled with fantastic things, topics, and just nuggets of truth that just stick with you that are just great.
Yeah. Did you know Luther didn't like that book?
Luther.
Yeah,
Oh,
Martin Luther.
Martin
He
Luther,
didn't
yeah.
like it. He called it that damnable little book. That's what he called it. Yeah.
sounds like he has a problem.
It made him mad. Well, because he was, salvation's by faith, and that was the cornerstone of his ministry.
Yeah.
And he struggled with James saying, "Faith without works is dead." Right. And so, but you have to take the two books together.
Sure.
But yeah, that's a great one though, man. It's only 5 chapters, but it's powerful.
Yes.
All right, so my second one would be Luke. I love the book of Luke. Yeah, I love. So Luke was the only Gentile that wrote a book in the New Testament, and he wrote from a non-Jewish perspective, and so the precision of his writing, the fact that he kind of focused on miracles and all those kinds of things, and he told the story pretty orderly fashion, but as an investigative reporter. I love the angle that he took in writing that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say my third pick is the Book of Philippians.
Oh, wow, that's a good one.
Probably mainly because it has my favorite passage of scripture in it completely, Philippians chapter 2.
Oh, uh-huh.
And obviously the rest of Philippians is great, but the primary reason is because of my favorite chapter.
Okay. I'm going to take Genesis.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be my third one. Yeah,
that's
I
a
like
really
Genesis.
good one.
So,
A lot of the phenomenal stories in Genesis.
well, it's the beginning of everything. So the beginning of how did it all get started, the beginning of sin, the beginning of eventually coming to Jesus through Abraham's life, Yeah, and then
Okay.
it's story driven, so it's easy to read.
Okay, so now we're in our fourth round.
That's right.
And so my fourth round is going to be Ephesians. And the reason why I chose Ephesians is because it is no nonsense. It is written to mature believers and people who get it.
Yeah.
And Paul just had an incredible relationship with them, and he writes it, and it's just great advice for Christians.
All right. I'm going to choose for my fourth one, Psalms. I
Okay.
really like the book of Psalms. I read a lot in the Psalms. Of course, it's a musician,
Right.
and I'm a musician, so that's it. The entire book, it's the longest book in the Bible, 150 Psalms. They're all prayers, either David or Asaph. For the most part, they're the two that wrote in there. And they're just prayers to God, but they're hysterical to me. Sometimes it's God's so good, or, the Lord is my shepherd, all those kinds of things. And it's other times it's like, God, kill my enemies. Don't just kill my enemies. Kill my enemies' kids. Wipe them off the face of the earth. Make people forget that they even existed. And I just love how raw and transparent David is, just writing in the moment of where his heart was. And God went, I'm going to put that in the Bible. And I love the fact that he did that.
So Josh is the guy running our sound
Yeah.
in the next room right now. And just moments before you walked in this morning, I had just opened and looked and seen that we were doing a draft.
yeah.
I was like, oh, check it out. We're doing a draft today.
Yeah.
And his first comment was, Jeff's going to choose the book of Psalms.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, why? And he said, because he's a musician.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why.
Well, David was also a warrior,
Yeah.
right? So he had both sides of that, the artistic side and the fighter side. And that's me.
Yep,
I'm a warrior.
Yeah,
I'm a warrior poet.
Yeah. Sure you are, Jeff. And then
I'm a giant slayer that loves
Yeah.
poetry.
so
I don't mean to brag, but
then here's our fifth round
yeah.
and final round, and I'm going to choose the book of Acts.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that was going to be my last one.
Was it?
Yes.
So because I won the rock paper scissors, really.
You got two of my three favorites.
Yeah. So the book of Acts is mostly about the Apostle Paul, as we have learned in this series. And Paul's my guy. Outside of Jesus, Paul's the guy. So
Yeah. And I mean, it's just the rapid spread of the gospel. And if we just run that same model, right, we're seeing the gospel continue to spread everywhere in the world. That's great. Okay, I'm going to pick, believe it or not, I'm struggling between 1 Peter and 1 John. I'm going to choose 1 John.
okay.
Yeah, John, walk in the light as he is in the light, love one another, all that kind of stuff is just great.
Yeah, a lot of great nuggets in there too.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
There you go.
Well, there it is.
Well, Peter,
Our
you would have
five-
been my next choice, Peter.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Oh, poor Peter.
I'm gonna get to heaven. He's gonna go, dude. I didn't
Marsha-
even make it in your draft.
Marsha,
Either one of you,
Marsha.
you guys picked 1/6 of the Bible, and you didn't pick my book.
That's so
But
funny.
we are in 1 Peter chapter
Yes.
5, and we're gonna just read the whole chapter today. It's 14
Yes.
verses, and we're gonna get right to it. He says.
Here's the advice part.
And now, a word to you who are elders in the churches. I too am an elder and a witness to the suffering of Christ. And I too will share in his glory when he is revealed to the whole world. As a fellow elder, I appeal to you. Care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you will get out of it, but because you are eager to serve God. Don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. And when the great shepherd appears, you'll receive a crown of never-ending glory and honor. In the same way, you younger men must accept the authority of the elders, and all of you serve each other in humility, for God opposes the proud, but favors the humble. So humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time he'll lift you up in honor. Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. Stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Remember that your Christian brothers and sisters all over the world are going through the same kind of suffering you are. In his kindness, God called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Christ Jesus. So after you have suffered a little while, he will restore, support, and strengthen you, and he will place you on a firm foundation. All power to him forever. Amen. I've written and sent this short letter to you with the help of Silas, whom I commend to you as a faithful brother. My purpose in writing to you is to encourage you and assure you that what you are experiencing is truly part of God's grace for you. Stand firm in this grace. Your sister church here in Babylon sends you greetings, and so does my son Mark. Greet each other with Christian love. Peace be with all of you who are in Christ.
So you know how you have an updated version of the NLT version?
Yeah.
So that second to the last verse there, that second to last sentence in verse 14, mine says, greet each other with a kiss of love,
Yeah.
which is hilarious.
King James says, greet each other with a holy kiss.
Holy kiss, yeah.
That's right.
That's so funny because, when you take verses out of context and you just sort of take one little verse and say, well, I guess that means
Yeah.
every time we meet in church,
We should be kissing.
we should be kissing. In fact, it should be a mandate.
Yeah. 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 That's right.
That's hilarious.
Instead of shaking hands.
Right.
Right. I'll shake your hand, but I'm going to kiss the pretty girl. Right.
Right.
That's when I was in youth group, man. That was it. That was one of my favorite verses in the Bible.
Yeah.
Greet each other with a holy kiss.
Right.
And my dad said, as long as that kiss is holy, I guess it'd be okay. I'm like, dang it. It's not.
Right. Right. At least I don't want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I want it to be a romantic kiss.
That's right. Not a holy kiss.
That's funny.
Okay.
So he starts off talking about advice for elders and young men, and it's interesting that he doesn't posture himself as somebody superior. Like I was a disciple of Christ. You're an elder, and I'm an elder, but I'm also one of the Big 12, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't do that at all.
Well, Peter didn't have to prove it. Paul, on a regular basis, had to reassert the fact that he was an apostle, right? Whereas everybody knew Peter was.
Right.
Peter's out there with all of his, in all his glory, messing up in front of everybody, and they all knew who he was and that he was a follower of Jesus. So he didn't have to prove it as often.
And not only was Peter one of the 12, but also he was one of the 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the inner circle. Jesus had an inner circle of we always say Peter, James, and John, and Peter's usually the one that's first among that list. So you could argue and say there's the 12, and then there's the 3, and then there's sort of the 1.
Yeah.
Even though that John always referred to himself as the one whom Jesus loved, right?
Yeah.
But we all know that it was sort of Peter that was given the keys to the kingdom of heaven is what the song says. And then also the idea that Peter would be the first to step out and cut off Malchus's ear. He was the first to step out into the boat. He was the first to say, I'm going to die with you. He was just the first he was just very passionate.
He was a unique choice for Jesus because he apparently was a business owner.
Yep.
He owned some boats. It seemed like he had multiple boats, not just one, which means that he had, been able to expand his business beyond just himself, which meant he probably had some employees, that kind of thing. We know he's the oldest of the disciples. So it's very strategic that Jesus chose a business guy who was used to leading other people, because almost all the rest of the people Jesus chose were under 20.
Right.
And the reason why we know that is when it came time to pay their taxes, Jesus just had the fish give 2 coins, 2 drachmas. And that was the price for the tax for them. And the other 10 guys didn't pay any taxes, right? Or the other 11, I guess, didn't pay taxes. It was just these 2 guys. So everybody else would have been young people, teenagers probably. So God, I think Peter was chosen to be kind of the dad when Jesus was gone, right? So he was strategically chosen to be in that inner circle as well. Jesus was going to entrust a lot of the leadership to him. And that really is how the early church viewed Peter for many, many years. He was the oldest. He was the leader. They followed him, right? And so in that context, then he's speaking with the authority of saying, hey, don't lord it over people and don't be pushy about your faith. Instead, and then he uses phrases like watch over, care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. That's very different than saying, make sure all the people that you're ruling over produce, right? He's saying care for the flock that God's entrusted you. These aren't your people, they're God's, and he's trusting you to lead them. But he does say care for the flock of God, watch over it. That would be like overseers, right? And then as elders. So those 3 roles we see, pastor, elder, and bishop, all 3 of those he has in this one sentence here, right?
That's great.
Of all 3 roles, that's the role of the leaders of a church.
Yeah, and I love how he emphasizes don't lord it over, and very strategically says, I'm an elder too.
Yeah.
And again, it's just, I love the fact that there's humility in his posture as he's giving advice not to lord it over them.
Yeah.
And this is the guy who saw the transfiguration, for crying out loud, right? Like he's only one of 3 people that saw it. He's only one of 3 that Jesus called and said, come a little further and pray with me.
Yeah.
He's
one of only 3 that was in the room when he raised the little girl from the dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Peter was definitely on the inner circle.
Yeah.
He had the right to posture himself other ways. But then he goes on and says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
Yeah, yeah.
So humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time, he'll lift you up. And so, just the idea that no matter how important you feel or how important you are, you and I just had a conversation before the podcast started filming. And we're not going to mention any names, of
Yes,
course.
right.
But there are.
We know a leader.
We know a leader, a particular leader, who's going on a particular trip with you, who is, to a developing country
Right.
that has, like, these people don't even own anything other than living in huts.
Right.
And they own rocks and sticks, and that's it.
Right.
But he's just extremely upset because, his accommodations aren't as good as they should
water.
be.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It is absolutely
asking for a lot of special concessions to care for him.
That is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And can somebody please come to my house and pick me up? Right.
Right.
And it's like, listen, I think that we can get in our own little world, can't we?
Yes.
We get our own little world, and when other people started to treat us a certain way, and by the way, we're not exempt from that.
No, sure.
Right? I mean, like, if we really lost perspective, we could actually walk around thinking we're important when we're not at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how many times do you have people who want to give you things, right?
All the time.
or don't want to charge or want to pay for a thing, and it's always incredibly embarrassing to me. I just recently had a medical thing, and but it was going to be something I had to pay out of my own pocket, and I didn't know that the person who was going to do that for me attended Heritage Church. I hadn't met him before, and then he wouldn't charge me. And it made me feel embarrassed a little bit. I'm like, oh, no. I think business people should make money. I want to pay you. Yeah. And he's standing there saying, God's used you to change my life. And I just want to be a blessing to you. And I just, all I could do is say thank you. But I do know people who shift the other way and just kind of start expecting it.
Right.
Right. So the next time I'll need to go back. The next time I'm going to make sure I'm able to pay him. I'm not going to let him give it to me for free the next time. But there's the temptation, I think, sometimes when you start being treated like a king, you expect to be treated like a king. And so it wouldn't be uncommon for some to go back and go, so you covered that last time. You got that again this time? Right? And expect it. And I just think that there's so much danger when we start believing what other people believe about us when it's good. The only good thing in me is Jesus, man. And so if God's used me to help you, it's only because Jesus was doing it. It's not because I deserve any kind of special treatment. And that's what he's saying here. I do think, though, he says in the same way, you younger men must accept authority of the elders. And then he goes down and says, all of you need to serve each other with humility. One of the tests of being able to be a leader is, can you be a good follower? Right. So I know a lot of young people who want to be bosses. They want to be leaders, and they just envision the power and the fact that, man, I'm going to be able to sit in my office and not do anything. I'm just going to make everybody go do all the work. They just don't understand what leadership is. And so, first of all, if you're going to be a good leader, you have to be a great follower. And because if you're a good follower, then you learn to empathize with how followers, the followers God's going to give you in the future are going to be feeling like and thinking. And if we isolate ourselves too much, then we lose that context. So being a great follower is the first step. Humble yourselves to the elders above you. And then in due season, the Bible says God will raise you up. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the next verse is a very famous verse, right?
Yeah.
So it says, stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour.
Yeah.
And then, and by the way, have you ever heard of the book Run to the Roar?
No.
So our good friend Dave Wilson interviewed a guy on Family Life Today on his podcast, and he was an author of this book that apparently was pretty successful. But you should know this, but actually when you're in the jungle and you hear a roar, it's designed to make you to run away from the roar.
Right.
Because what's happening is if you hear a roar at you, that means that you have lionesses around you.
Right. The hunters.
The hunters.
Because the roaring lion isn't the one who's actually doing the hunting.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the assignment of the big lion with the big mane is to roar.
Right.
And so what he does is he'll roar so that you run in the opposite direction right into the trap that is set for you.
Right.
So apparently this is a common thing. And so what he did was he actually said the safest place to run is actually toward the roar. And he was talking about this exact verse, how the devil is, around you, and he prowls around you like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. and just the evil schemes of the devil. And I guess that whole concept is about spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
And he says, run to the roar. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. So when the roar in your ear is don't speak up, you might lose your job. Run to the roar. Don't trust it. The roar is trying to make you say, don't speak up. So whatever the devil's trying to whisper in your ear, go the opposite direction. That's the idea of that? Is that what he's talking about?
That's what he's saying, yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's really good. When the roar in your ear is there's no hope for your marriage.
Right.
Turn around and run back. There is hope for your marriage. When the roar in your ear is that there's no hope for health, turn around and run and make the choices for health. When you feel like there's no hope for your finances, turn around and find the solutions to your finances. I think that there's so many good things on that. And then with temptation too, right? You're never going to overcome these addictions. That's not true. You can overcome these addictions. Greater is he that is in me than he is in the world. He can give me power. He can help me do that. I love that. When I've been, every time I've ever gone on a safari, every single time, and this is rare. I don't know anybody else to say this. Every time I've been on 9 safaris, I've always seen lions every single time. Yeah. So even when I travel with people who've never seen lions, they say, "Oh, come with me. We'll see lions," and we do every time. And one time we pulled up next to a lion. It was about 7 in the morning. Probably 6:45 in the morning. My son was with me. We had the roof off the top of our truck, and we pull up, and this lion is just laying on the side of the road in the sun, and his belly's a little bloated like that. And there's a big male lion, biggest mane I've ever seen, huge. He's probably 350 pounds, 400 pounds. And when we pulled up, he just rolled over, and then he's just looking at us, and he's like 8 feet, 9 feet from us. Literally, he's laying right at the base of our truck. And I said to the driver, I said, "Man, I'm glad I'm way up here. This had scared me." He goes, "Oh," he said, "if he gets to his feet, just in a crouch, he can jump in the truck without even touching the truck. He can jump like 10 feet high. We're only 8 feet from him." I'm like, "Yeah, keep driving, buddy." Right. And he just looks around. But we were so close when he looked. If you've ever looked in the eyes of a lion, it's just death.
Yeah.
That's what you see.
And
you see death. Yeah. We got up close, didn't we? We got up close.
I posted something on Facebook when we went to Tanzania.
Yeah.
And there was a lion that
we were an open truck with no walls.
Open truck with no doors.
And we pulled up on what, 5?
We pulled up on like 5 lions.
Yeah.
And one was walking alongside, because we were sort of like rolling, and he was walking along, or she was walking alongside of us, and she was walking at an angle toward me. And she was probably 6 feet from me. And the entire time, she took like 8 steps and looked me eye to eye with all 8 steps.
And it's just death.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she just turned and went the other way. And I remember on the video that I posted, I actually said, "I just wet my pants."
Yeah. So everything about a lion is designed to incite fear. And so oftentimes they're hunting gazelles, and gazelles run in groups. And that roar is to get them to leave the group. Right? There's safety in numbers. There's safety in the group. That roar is to try to get them to leave the group, to make them be afraid, to stop thinking clearly, and to run away and isolate themselves. And then they'll get killed like that. But this is why Jesus gave us the church. One of the reasons is we are strong together, we're weak alone. And a lot of times in those moments of temptation or struggle, we decide to wallow in our aloneness instead of going and getting the help that we need from other believers. Yeah. And so everything that Satan does is to scare you away from trusting Jesus.
Well, so we'll end with this then. It's our time. So then the advice that Peter gives in verse number 9, stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. And remember that your family of believers all over the world is going to go through the same kind of suffering you are. Yep. So there's safety in numbers.
It's your Christians and brothers and sisters. That's where I was going. I just didn't read the verse. Yeah, that's right. That's great.
Well, that's a good place to end, and we will see you next time on The Bible Guys.